Hello, today I'm going to show you how to paint Magnolia, and when you're looking for it, do try and find it at eye level. It's much easier. As they're very delicate, I've got Rose Madder and Alizarin Crimson because one's more transparent than the other and it'll show how delicate the flowers are. I'm starting with the flowers in the middle as they're most dominant and catch your eye first. I've made up a sap green and a neutral grey, so that I can move quickly and bleed the colours into each other if necessary. I have put a list of colours used and any helpful hints on mixing in the description, and please like and subscribe to these videos as it helps me decide what to paint in future to show you. Still concentrating on the middle flowers, I'm adding the green stem and leaves, with a hint of lemon yellow just to make it a little bit more vibrant, and some of the leaves have also got a hint of crimson on the corners. Staying in the middle, I'm using a mixture of brown and then leaving it to dry for a second and then filling the gaps with Naples yellow to show the new shoots. Most paint sets come with several browns, so just practice on a spare piece of paper and get to know them. By painting the leaves, the flower head and the stem all in the middle, I can establish the tones. The next bud in the middle has got very distinctive dark petal coming through, so I'm using Alizarin Crimson this time. Just going in with the dark triangle, and it goes all the way up to the edge. So put the line in. Wipe the brush off, don't make it too wet, and just bring the paint up. You're getting a lost edge. Then on the outside of the petal that is white at the top, it's pink at the bottom. I'll just go round the leaf, take up the shape as best I can. Water again, just lose the edge. For the branches, I'm using homemade grey mixed with a little bit of raw umber, and I'm going to just start with a few gentle lines, and there's sunshine hitting the branch one side, so I'm going to put in a gentle line. It's very smooth bark, this. And then a little bit more darker paint on the underside. Yeah, obviously still developing. I've let the flowers and leaves dry, and I've now got a big brush and very weak French ultramarine, and I'm just putting in a very light background which will help the white petals show up more. Whilst the sky I've put in around the white petals to make them look brighter is drying, I'm just putting in a few slender branches with a mixture of homemade grey and raw umber, so that you don't get lost in lots of branches that are all overlapping each other. If you go along and pick out the pinky crimson bits and mark them off, and then go back and do the leaves, and then the whites are highlighted last of all. And what I'm doing with some of them is just putting on a little bit more paint. I've got Rose Madder, which is slightly pinker. Just put it on, wet the brush so that it's clear, and then just feather it up, and it just adds a high spot. And I've done the same with the crimson there, just to make it more vibrant. And I'm working my way along the lower branch now. And the next thing to do is to put some more leaves in. So I've got sap green tinted with a little bit of lemon yellow, just to give it a bit of sing. And I'm just going to just look for places that I can put a few more leaves without getting totally lost. Now this one's an easy one to map out because it overlaps, but there are some below it that are quite small and wrapped around the branches. So I'll just put a little one in, I think it needs a tiny bit more yellow. They're very vibrant when they first unfurl. And then a few more, just putting in the shape of a simple leaf. When you've added a few more leaves, stop. And then there's some buds coming out, and they're quite fun. I'm doing these with Naples yellow and a bit of crimson. And every one is slightly different. And there's one here that's just opening, and it's got quite odd colours where it's peeling back. Just pop it in to show that it's opening. Bring the bud back to the striped stem that we did earlier. Just clean the brush completely and dry it off, and then move the paint that's already there. And then the bud is coming out almost as pea green, so it's lots and lots of yellow on the sap green, but not too strong. I'll go from the point and work back. Clean the brush, dry it on the kitchen roll, and then just feather it back. I can put a second coat on there later. Now while I'm there, I've got all the browns I mixed up from doing the stem. Now I've got the opening bud on, I can make that a bit stronger. Don't want to make it look like a zebra crossing, but it is quite striped. So now I've got a little moisture on the brush. I'm just softening them slightly. And then the leaf behind it can have a little bit more emphasis, because it's actually, you can see the bottom of it underneath and the top of it at this end, so it's quite different. Where it changes there's a little bit of shadow, so I use a homemade grey just to darken it slightly. But now I'll try the flower in the middle that is all two opening, almost looking at each other. Just concentrate on the leaf and the shape of the bud. So it's a little bit brown on one edge. We have had some cold nights, so it might be that it's got a little bit stained. So again, it's number 4 brush, just wiping it off, just using plain water just to give a dirty smudge, and then go back with the crimson and just make the area of pink butt up to it slightly. And then I don't know whether it's picking up the light of the green, but it looks a little bit green. Things aren't ever pure white, there's always some other local colour. And then the other one has got a shadow where the petals meet underneath, and the leaf coming down, which I can emphasise slightly. Now the only way I can make this stronger is to just change to a slightly bigger brush and put some French ultramarine on, which is very, very diluted, just to show the white petals. And by painting around a negative area, it puts the emphasis back on the white, and then I can highlight it if I need to. So just using plain water and taking the paint that's already on the page for a little walk. Now in my reference here I've got the house next door, but I'm not really worried about that. It's the blue I want to put in. You can do lost and found edges, you don't have to put every detail in. That if you leave something for the viewer to use their imagination for. And again, the leaf will be better with having some blue there, but not too much. It's not very big. So what I can do is just stir up some of the homemade grey with a little bit of brown, just mix it all up. So it's not white, it's not anything, but it will just make the white petals stand forward. I'm just going to move on to this flower now while all this area here dries. Still putting in odd bits that look like they might have had a little bit of frost is an odd bit of brown. And all sorts of warm earthy colours, so I'll try some yellow ochre just to show that it's perhaps the remains of the bud. And some quite dark brown around the shadow of it. Anything dark can make the white sing out a lot more. And then more Alizarin Crimson. Trying to work out how it goes between the petals. I just put a couple of lines in. And again here. And that one changes. So I'll add the Rose Madder, which is a slightly different shade. Because it's higher. It's got different light shining through it. Now I need a completely clean brush, make sure all the colour's gone. Just wet it slightly and then pull out the edges. And this goes all the way up to the petal that's going across it, so I'll just pull it up that far. And the petals aren't completely white here, they've got a little bit of a grey edge against the sky. So I'm just going around with a homemade grey on the points. The situation of flowers in can make a huge difference to how it looks. Now I'm changing to a little bit of lemon yellow, which is going to be almost clear. It's going to be so puddled. Put more and more water in. And then from the points, just work it back a little bit. And the yellow chemicals will send the grey back a little bit as well. It's still white, but it's got some warmth to it. When it's dry, I can add a little bit more detail. Now the one here's got a lot of shadow on, so I use the same principle, the homemade grey and the lemon yellow, just to give a little bit of shadow. Putting the grey in first. Clean the brush, dry it a little, go back to my tiny puddle of lemon yellow, and just pop it in. And it'll make it look like the sun is shining through the very thin petal. And a line of grey up here, and then I'll leave the others completely white for the moment because it gives a contrast. Even this one here's got the yellow and grey. Now I come to look at it, put the grey in, wipe the brush, and a tiny bit more yellow on the right hand side. I'm going back to the middle now. Everything's dried and there's a few branches that need to be put in. And some of them are in shadow, so they might need a second coat on the bottom side. Just starting off, and they've got lots of nooks and crannies. They're not necessarily completely smooth. So I've mixed French ultramarine and burnt umber. I'm just gently putting them in. The one I'm doing now is lighter on the right, so what I'm going to do is just mix some Paynes grey on the existing brush and just drop it in, and the same underneath here. And then it goes up right next to the stem here. There's often things that are semi-hidden. And now just get a clean brush, still a bit damp, and just blend the edges together. Change to a rigger, and I'm making the paint a little bit darker to do the more distant branches behind that weave their way through everything. So the best thing is to find something that you're sure of. So there's a green bud up there, so I can start with that. Then it comes down and goes across. Keeps going. Obviously it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong with these because it's just a wobbly branch, but it's nice to try and get some accuracy into it. And then just goes behind here a little bit. And keep going with the original line. And there's going to be flowers, buds coming out all around here. Goes in front of one flower. Keeps going up. And then there's a lot of it coming down. All the tiny little buds that are all wavy, which probably add to the effect. But you can't necessarily get every nook and cranny in, but I think it's quite fun the way the lines dance around. And obviously they're different branches, they're meeting in the middle here. I've stopped at this point because I'm getting a bit lost and I don't want to put them over these big buds because they were the focal point of the picture, so it's nice to have the sky behind. So I'm going to make a very dainty layer of little flowers above and a few leaves, and then a few leaves down the bottom. Then I'll go back to making some of the tones and details stronger. So I'm going back to the number 4 brush. And I'm going to start with this flower because it's easy. So I'm not cleaning my palette, I'm going back to using the colours again. If I need to match something, I can match it, or if I've wiped it with a cloth, I'm a bit lost. So going over to this leaf, just putting it in gently. It can be vague because he's at quite a distance. And then a little bit of green underneath the stem. Then the rest of it is quite delicate, so as it's further away, I'm going to go in with the rose madder. Again, it looks like it might have a little bit of frost on it. Just put some stripes on so that it's obvious what it is. And a tiny bit of crimson in the middle just to make it a bit darker. And then for some reason I've got a dark spot up there. Fresh water, just bleed it out. And then I don't know what that is, but if it's got a brown mark, it has a brown mark. And then round the back it's got some of the bud that's still stuck. And again at the bottom, so it needs to be a bit richer, so I use a warm brown, using burnt umber. And then now I'm there, I can put a tiny bit more definition on the branch that it's on. These are quite knobbly. Just needs a little bit. Wipe it off again. Go back to the green. And there's another leaf that's easy, so I can put that one in and then I can map other things off from it. So easy to get lost in all these branches. I've just added a little bit more blue behind the flowers just to give more contrast, This time with a number 8 brush, just going in very loosely, and it just makes the white stand forward. I just worked my way around with a size 4 brush and picked out a few details of leaf buds and a few more leaves, and just generally making sure that I've got everything that I need. When that's dry, I'm going to go around and find a few little branches in tangled areas like this. And then the next stage is to put on some petal shadows. Some of them look a little bit grey, others have got the light coming through and look a bit yellow. So I'll just make them a bit more three-dimensional. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. The magnolia tree is one that I've known most of my life, and it's a real pleasure to look at it. The next video is Secret Cornwall, which will be out in a few days, and in the meantime I encourage you to go out and find your nearest tree. It might be a camellia, might be a rhododendron, might be magnolia, and just see what you can find and enjoy painting it.